Good afternoon, everyone. This is Muslim Marine coming to you live again. This time I'm with my newest friend, Pastor Nancy. We're at the Redeemer Lutheran Church here in Fort Myers. Wonderful people. First time I've been down here this far in Florida.
Well, good. I'm glad you're having a good experience.
I was stationed in Pensacola for a little while.
How was that?
It was wonderful.
Good.
But I never made it down here.
It's a long haul.
This is like the Caribbean for me. Like I walked off the plane, I got out of the airport, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like...
Yeah, it's hot here.
It is hot. It is very hot. I'm sure we're going to have more people joining as we talk, but this is going to be recorded, so you can play it back if you want to share it with anybody. But I'm here, like I said, with my newest friend, Pastor Nancy. And you're having an event today. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on today?
We're having our second event. We had one last year as well for mental health awareness, to try to raise some awareness and to have some conversation about what it is to have mental health issues for whatever part of the spectrum of life you end up on. Whether it's you're an older person and you have caregiver issues and it's hard as heck to be a full-time caregiver for somebody, and so lots of people suffer from depression and all kinds of other things from that. Whether it's depression or anxiety or other stuff going on that leads you to self-medicate with like substance abuse and those kinds of pieces. Mm-hmm. So our goal today has been to raise some awareness, to open some conversation, and to really try and end the stigma of the conversation, because so many people don't want to talk about mental illness or mental health issues. They think that it makes you broken or somehow less than, and what we're trying to say is together we're a better community if we can help each other with whatever's going on in our life, and this is just one of those arenas where we have stuff going on in our life.
And what kind of response have you seen from the community in terms of any feedback as to this particular issue? Have you had any anybody say positive or negative things about your decision to pursue this?
Not to pursue this particular issue, to kind of raise it to the top. I think most people just don't want to talk about it. Yeah. So it's easier for people to say, I don't have an issue with mental health. I don't want to talk about mental health. As a pastor, I have lots of people who come to me to talk about issues from all spectrums of life, but nobody would ever call themselves having mental health issues. Yeah. But most of us, at some point in our journey, have those issues.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because there's things that people feel uncomfortable talking about. And as a Muslim, I can tell you that there's a lot of times where people feel uncomfortable talking to me about Islam because of the stigma or the stereotype that's out there in the media. Let me ask you, so I know that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community also participated in this event last year.
Right, absolutely.
And again this year. Can you share some honest thoughts about your experience with the Ahmadiyya Muslim community?
Well, I have a huge gift and privilege of connecting with the Ahmadiyya community through another pastoral colleague, and that happened, my first meeting was at the Fort Myers Book Fair, which would have been a year ago, March.
Okay.
And it was phenomenal, and everybody that I've met has been just very generous. And then I had the next great gift of being invited to and able to attend the Jalsa in Pennsylvania.
The Jalsa, by the way, is the annual convention, is the annual peace conference that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community holds.
Right.
And we've been doing it for, over 50 years. I think
it was
65 years maybe. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but yeah.
It was really incredible. And as one of the few clergy non-Muslim women that was invited to be a part of the event, I had privileges that nobody else had. I mean, I could be on either side of the event. I could be with the women and experiencing the gift that all the women bring, or I could be on the side with the men and experiencing all the gifts that the men bring. I was super lucky.
Can you share a short story or something that happened during the Jalsa that has been really memorable and left an impression on you? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm totally putting you on the spot.
I'm trying to think. So I think for me, one of the things that was really remarkable was that at one night there's an event where there's a whole panel of people who present and have conversation. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to say a few words. And so I did that. And that was the side that was predominantly the men and the non-Muslim visitors. And then the women watched from next door. And then after I spoke, I got to go speak with the women. And for me, the insights that the women had and the insights that the other community had, like the other side of the people, I don't know how you say that. The men and the non-Muslim people, because it was a mixed group because there were non-Muslims over there.
Got it.
The insights that everybody had and the response and the welcome was just, it was overwhelming.
That's wonderful.
And the women just made me feel like
That's great.
I belonged, which was really very cool.
And for any of the viewers, if you guys have a question for either myself or Pastor Nancy, please feel free, and we'll try to bring you into the conversation as well. So you went to Jalsa last year, and earlier you and I had a conversation about your visit to London.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about London.
What happened? What happened in London?
I got to meet the Khalifa. I got to meet Hazur, which was
that's awesome.
And my friend and colleague who introduced me to the Ahmadiyya community was the part of that. And so he and I, Pastor Mark, well, he's not a pastor anymore, Mark Tonneson and I had this wonderful, long conversation with Hazur, which was all about. It was really.
How did that even come about? I mean, you can't just go to London and be like, hey, I'm just going to go.
I'm coming in the door. No. So he had a conversation because he went to the UK, Jalsa Salana, and had an opportunity there to present Hazur at the event with a letter of gratitude and welcome and partnership from our denomination, from the Lutheran Church, and so he had that opportunity there. So he kind of had that kind of big in the moment, and then when we went back on our little vacation-y trip thing that we took, he said, well, would you like to go?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'd love to go to the mosque and see people and and see it and whatever. And he said, well, let's see if Hazur's going to be in town. And I said, you're crazy. There's no way we're going to get in.
And by the way, the reason where I'm actually quite shocked that she was able to do this is the Khalifa, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, he's the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
Yeah.
We are Muslims who believe in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. We are established in over 200 nations around the globe, and our population, we're the fastest growing sect within Islam. And so even for members like myself, when we meet with Hazur, it's a very long process, and he's very accessible. I mean, we write to him, we do all those things, but it is definitely a very long process to get mulaqat, or to get a personal meeting. And usually those meetings last anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe you're lucky to get 10 minutes, right? And so Pastor Nancy and her friend Mark apparently had a very long personal
it was really long.
Audience with His Holiness.
It was quite remarkable, and I felt so humbled and at the same time kind of guilty, because when we left there was this long line of people waiting, and I thought we took up so much of his time. But so anyway, so Mark talked to somebody that he had met when he had been at the Jalsa and said, we're going to be in town and I would love for my colleague to meet Hazur and the Khalifa with an amazing gift, spend some time with us, and made it happen. And so
that's wonderful.
It was out of this world.
So Nancy, I mean, obviously you've been very generous with sharing your experience, and it seems like your experiences have been mostly positive with dealing with the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. What would you have to say to those Americans who are skeptical about Muslims in general, and Islam in particular, and what kind of advice or words of wisdom would you have to share with them?
I think for me, when people lump people of faith into one community, into one ideology, we have a problem. So even in my congregation, unfortunately, I have people who struggle with Muslim community people and what do they believe and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, what I say is, if you're going to take one piece of scripture and use it to kind of say to a whole community of faith you are all bad, then we have to be honest about that in terms of our scripture as well as the Bible. Because you can take one verse out of the Bible and turn it into this hate-filled, awful thing, which is not what our scriptures teach us. Just as you can take one scripture out of the Quran, you can take one scripture out of the Torah, you can take one scripture out of Taoism, you can take one piece of any of those beliefs and turn them into something that can to make somebody the other and to push them apart. But until we begin to build bridges, until we have conversations, until I can celebrate. This is what Hazur told us in our conversation. Until we can celebrate the beauty in each of our religions, we're not going to be able to build bridges. So until I can celebrate the beauty of what it is in Islam to be people who are first and foremost faithful, and then not just faithful to Allah, but also faithful to one another, to who we are together as creation. Until I can celebrate that with you, and you can celebrate with me who I understand God to be, and how God has called us to love one another as well, right? I mean, we have that in common across our scriptures. Until we can celebrate those beautiful pieces together, we're not going to be able to build those bridges of peace. And I think that is the most important part.
And you, in saying that, you've actually summarized the entire teaching of Islam. I mean, all my viewers know this, and I say this over and over again. Islam has two main obligations for believers. One is that you worship God, and two is that you serve humanity, regardless of what faith they are, or even if they have a faith at all.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. There's no parameters in Islam or in Christianity that say, if you do not believe, if you don't look like me, think like me, smell like me, eat like me, dress like me, talk like me, that I'm not supposed to love you. Exactly. It says God first, neighbor, humanity second.
Yeah.
That's right?
No, you're absolutely right. It was interesting. I was having a conversation just earlier today with another one of your colleagues that was here, and he said, he compared the Lord's Prayer with the very first chapter of the Holy Quran, which is Surah Al-Fatiha. And when you look at just the words, forget everything else, but if you just compare the words of the Lord's Prayer with the translation of Surah Al-Fatiha, it's the exact same prayer.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think I think for me that's the thing that so many people don't understand.
Yeah.
We are one people in that sense. And how then we practice that faith and live out that faith, that's the gift of diversity. That's the gift of I come in my crazy, peacock colored hair and doing whatever I do.
Looks
what
lovely,
I mean?
by the way. I was going to comment on that earlier.
I get to come in all of that, and you get to come as you do with your hat on backwards, and we get to come together for the sake of humanity.
Absolutely.
So
that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Guys, I'm having a blast down here. I've met so many interesting people.
Come on down.
And definitely come on down. We're off of, I don't even know what the address of this place is. But,
so Redeemers at 3950 Winkler Avenue Extension in Fort Myers, Florida. But just get close enough, we'll help you find us.
Absolutely. And again, if you have any questions, please, do ask. Contact me at Muslim Marine on Twitter. I don't know if you want to give out your contact information if anybody has a question.
I don't even know. I know I have a Twitter account, but I couldn't have no clue. I couldn't tell you what it is.
Well, you can find her. Just Google search her or something, and you can find
Pastor
her.
Nancy Amburn at Redeemer.
Nancy, yeah. And so thank you guys so much for checking in, and appreciate some of the supportive comments that you guys shared. And this is what it's about. We got to go out there. We got to build bridges with one another. We got to try at least do our part in trying to understand one another. And if we look at each other with suspicion, we continue to fill that void with ignorance, with more suspicion, it's not going to work. And things fall apart really quickly there. So show your courage. Go out there, meet someone who's of a different faith from what you believe. Get to know them, and you'll begin to realize that, look, we're all human beings. We all want the same thing. We value life. We value health. We value liberty. And at the end of the day, we're going to get through this thing together, or we're not going to get through this thing. So,
and the only way to get through it is together, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.